Good evening and welcome to another edition of Dodgers Dawgs as part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker. It is my privilege to be here tonight, Wednesday night in the big town here on Dodgers Dawgs, to be able to talk some more Dodgers baseball, as I think we're all in a little bit of a good mood after a series in which they needed to go up against a team like the Miami Marlins, and they took care of business against them. We'll be talking a little bit about that. Won't get into as much in-game type of analysis going through the play-by-play. I'm sure a lot of you had the chance to be able to watch the game, to be able to dive into that. Casey might do a little bit of that on a show, maybe tomorrow, if he's able to do that. It is just me tonight. Casey is actually on assignment currently right now in Oklahoma City, where Clayton Kershaw is rehabbing for the Oklahoma City Comets. So he is over in Oklahoma City in the old Bricktown ballpark, making sure that he's watching Clayton Kershaw right now, which I believe Clayton Kershaw is through 5 innings. I haven't had a chance to watch his outing yet. I've been watching the Loons and preparing for the show today. Sounds like Kershaw ran into a little bit of trouble during the 5th inning, gave up a pair of home runs. 5 innings is what he's been able to pitch. 3 earned runs in the outing so far. Has 4 strikeouts on the day. So he's continuing to work his way back into the Dodgers rotation. I don't have a lot of analysis on Clayton Kershaw's outing. I will hand that off to Casey the next time that he's able to go on as far as giving you an update on Clayton Kershaw. I just know that he is continuing to work his way back, and it seems like he's going deeper and deeper into these outings, going at least 5 innings into this one. We'll see if he comes back out for the 6th inning. He is on his way back, and that is a very good thing for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about pitching-wise as far as what the Dodgers' plan is going to be going forward with the injuries that have happened to the pitching staff, with everything that's going on with Tyler Glasnow, who is now on the injured list, with Blake Snell also being on the injured list. How do the Dodgers maneuver their way through this stretch just to get to Clayton Kershaw being part of this rotation? How do they manage that while also being able to provide as much rest for players like Roki Sasaki and Yoshi Yamamoto, making sure that they are as healthy and as acclimated going forward at the big league level? I think that is a very huge importance for the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'll dive into that a little bit, as well as just an overall update, overall look as far as where things stands with this offense, with the entire roster where the Los Angeles Dodgers are. I want it to be a little bit more of an interactive show with you guys, talking through where you guys are at with this team, as well as certain criteria that need to be met in order for potential changes to be made to the Los Angeles Dodgers. So, as we were getting started with the show and as people continue to file in, the Los Angeles Dodgers were able to defeat the Miami Marlins today. It was by a score of 12-7, in which case you saw, as Craig Osterberg said, great offense today. Yeah, the offense was firing quite a bit on all cylinders, really throughout this entire series. The Dodgers win against an opponent who, to be fair to the Miami Marlins, they are in a rebuilding type stage, but that is exactly what a team like the Dodgers should be doing against a team like the Marlins. They should be taking advantage of these types of opponents when they come up on their schedule, and that is exactly what the Dodgers did. A lot of guys that have been hot continue to propel themselves to just continue to put up really solid numbers. Teoscar Hernandez is unbelievable right now with what he is able to do on the offense. And what I really like from Teoscar Hernandez is his ability to adapt as he goes along. You can see Teoscar Hernandez, he has 9 home runs. He's got a lot of different RBIs on the season, but it is those small things, those small moments to be able to drive in runs, to take things the opposite way, to have a little bit of a different approach on 2 strikes, to go ahead and do what you can to have those winning baseball plays that makes Teoscar Hernandez and what he's able to do offensively incredibly impressive. very aggressive approach at the plate, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Andy Pages as well, is having an impression on Andy Pages as both of them are going forward and trying to make the offense as good as it possibly can be. And you can't give enough credit thus far to Teoscar Hernandez. Today, he went 3 for 5, scored a run, had a double, an RBI added onto there. Overall, and his numbers are going to improve from where they are at right now because the numbers don't update until the next day. But Teoscar Hernandez, batting average right now, this is updated, 310, OPS 946. His WRC plus is going to probably increase from its current 152 status. He's just going out there and being really solid offensively, which is exactly what you need from a player like a Teoscar Hernandez, who is not going to provide you the greatest defense in the outfield. If you're going to have a player like that, they have to be able to contribute in a wide variety of different ways. Not to mention, Teoscar Hernandez was able to steal several different bases. That is an element that you don't think of really ever with a Teoscar Hernandez, but he was able to throw that in there a little bit today. That's great to see. Continue to see him go out there, contribute offensively is a very good thing. And despite him not really walking much at all, he's really cut down on a lot of the swing and miss, especially with 2 strikes, which is really positive to see for Teoscar Hernandez. He's absolutely on fire. But what I love about Teoscar Hernandez is, and this is something that they talk about quite a bit on the broadcast, and it is so evident when you actually watch these games, is the way that he's taking his role and mentoring a younger player to help him succeed. When we talk about the Dodgers, one of the biggest concerns that I had going into this season, and continue to have for the Dodgers, is their lack of youth, particularly on the offensive side, going forward for the long-term success of the Dodgers. When we're talking a lot about different concepts, different things, we're talking a lot of long-term success is what I'm thinking about. And what Teoscar Hernandez has been able to do is he's been able to mentor Andy Pages as he's gone into the season. And you can really see having him go through mentoring, helping Andy get to the place where he needs to be has really helped change Andy Pages as the season has gone along. Andy Pages, throughout his entire journey at the minor leagues, has had a lot of success down there. And he knows that he's good at baseball. It was a struggle to start the season, to say the very least, for Andy. And there's a lot of people that were questioning the Dodgers' decision, one, to have him at the league, and especially at the center field position at the big league level. Andy Pages has turned it around in an incredible way. Today, went 1 for 4, did have a walk as well, which was a really good at-bat that he was able to work that walk. An RBI single, just adding to some of his totals. Overall in the season, he has raised his batting average right now to 292 and 891 OPS after today's game. Entering today's game, he was tied for the team lead and wins above replacement with Shohei Ohtani and with Tommy Edman. And that's going to stay around relatively the same figure for Andy Pages at 1.2, which through the first month of the season was not something, especially after the first couple of weeks, that you figured would happen with Andy Pages. Turned around a lot better defensively. Did have the one play in center field today where he dove after it. It got by him. I'm actually okay with that play, even though that is not necessarily the smart baseball play to do at that moment, because if it gets by you, it's going to score a run and very likely could lead the runner to third base. So on the baseball mindset, you can say, okay, that's not the correct play to be able to make. But what I think that is showcasing is Andy Pages' aggressiveness and confidence when he's out on the field, because when Andy Pages is confident and when he's out there thinking that he's the best player on the field, because in most years, until he's gotten to the big league level, he's been one of, if not the best player on the field. I think that's when you see Andy Pages at his best, and certainly he's played with a ton of confidence of recent. He's been a lot better in 2-strike situations of taking pitches up the middle for the base hit that he adds for center field. It's been great to be able to watch with Andy Pages. I think there's a couple of lessons that you can take away from the Teoscar Hernandez and Andy Pages' situation to the start of the season that I have addressed. One, there's a couple of different things to know. One, it is still only April. Tomorrow is the first day of May, which means we've only gone through 1 month of the season. Or if you want to be technical, you can say a little bit over a month since we started technically mid-March, but really the end of March. It's been about a month into the season. There are a lot of players that go through hot months and then they go through really cold streaks. And what's going to be important is for both Teoscar Hernandez and Andy Pages, but particularly Andy Pages because he's a little bit more unproven, less experience at the big league level, is how do you limit some of the cold stretches that you are at, and as far as the time period within you're in those cold stretches. That is still have yet to be seen. We still have to be patient with players even when they are doing really well. If you notice that Casey and I, we often highlight the positives of a lot of these players, and that's because we're incredibly positive people, and baseball is an incredibly difficult sport that is very difficult to have success in. So celebrating times when players are doing well, I think is something that's incredibly important to be able to do. But you can't get too carried away with that. So as good as Andy Pages has been, you have to have a little bit of a level head, just like you have to have a little bit of a level head when he was struggling quite a bit. So with younger players, and this I hope this is a lesson that Dodgers and Dodgers fans learn, patience is a very underrated skill set and underrated virtue to have with younger players. If you put younger players in a position to go out there and succeed and give them time to be able to do that, because these players are incredibly talented, there is a shot that they're going to be able to do it if you stick with it long enough and if you put them in the best situation that you can be to be able to succeed. With Andy Pages, he was not necessarily playing the best defensive position that was best for him to succeed, but you pair him with somebody like a Teoscar Hernandez who can help mentor him into a player that he can be a really solid player. You put him in his corner and you give him a long, sustained at-bats. You continue to throw him out there and see what he's able to do. And if the talent is there, just like the talent is in there with Andy Pages, because they are giving him consistent reps, because they're putting him in positions where he could potentially succeed, and you're surrounding him by players in which he can learn from, I think that created an environment where Andy Pages went from somebody who about a week ago was a player that basically most people were ready to move on from and send him back down to Oklahoma City, to a player that is probably going to be around for the Los Angeles Dodgers, assuming health, for at the very least the next month and a half, 2 months, even if he starts to struggle quite a bit again, just because we've seen this stretch for Andy Pages and because he provides a lot of value on the field. Patience with younger players, putting them in situations where they can best succeed, which I think has mostly been done with Andy Pages, albeit maybe not the best defensive position for him, but putting him around other players as well has been proven really well for him. As I had mentioned, Andy Pages was tied for, coming into today's game, for the most Fangraphs WAR among all Dodgers players, including among the ranks of Shohei Ohtani and Tommy Edman at 1.2. Entered with 152 WRC+. That'll probably dip to about 146, 147, 148 after today's game, just doing some rough estimates. With a 1 for 4 plus 1 walk performance. It won't dip that much for him, so he'll stay around those exact same numbers. It has been so incredibly impressive and amazing to be able to watch, because if you're talking about the long-term future of success for this team, not talking about if they're going to win the World Series this year, but talking about the long-term success for the Dodgers, he is one of the players that you look at and want to succeed some of the most, because he is on the young side of the aging curve, and because history says that if you have too many players that are increasing with age, their production is going to start to decrease. So if you can help offset that with an Andy Pages, I think that is an incredibly positive thing to be able to have. That's enough on Andy Pages right now. Been incredibly encouraged, been super happy for Andy, because I know it's been a struggle for him, and just seeing him go out there and be reminded of the player that I saw down at Great Lakes, so amazing to be able to see that. Super happy for Andy. So there are two of the players that have performed really well. The rest of the offense, really solid. You got to see first home run of the season for Max Muncy. Man, that felt good, because that was so much needed for Max Muncy, who has been struggling quite a bit to get the season started. Max Muncy, entering today's game, we're going to talk about entering today's game, was last in the team in Fangraphs WAR, negative 0.4. Really struggled because his game is built on offense. He's not the greatest third baseman, and it hasn't been as good defensively as it was last year. It was improved from what it was previously. He's below average defender. I think that is something that we can all take into account. He was going into the game batting 180, 295, 236 with 0 home runs. Hits his first home run of the game today, and everyone could tell that that was a huge sigh of relief for Max Muncy. Also had the triple. I was listening to it on the radio, so I didn't get a chance to actually see that play, but I don't know if it was necessarily one of those triples where it's a automatically triple, or if it was slightly induced by some of the fielding. I didn't get a chance to be able to watch it, but that goes down as a triple. That is going to help some of his numbers. Had a walk as well. Really solid day for Max Muncy. It is, he has too long of a track record of being successful to see him have this sustained stretch just drop off that dramatically. It is totally fair to say I expect some negative regression with Max Muncy this year, but to have him go from being a well above league average to bat to being 41% below league average, which his WRC plus entering today's game was 59, that is not something that I would have, nor most people would have predicted for Max Muncy. So really encouraging to see him go out there do that. Another underrated performance today. Austin Barnes went out there and had 3 hits, 3 for 5, upped his batting average to 250 on the season. Just had a really solid day for him. He's going to remain on the team for quite a bit. Kike Hernandez had 2 hits. Great for him. Freddie Freeman also, who's been underrated with a lot of the production that he has had, has an OPS of 1.045. He went out there, hit a home run today, doing really solid Freddie Freeman things. Good to see Mookie Betts also have a pair of hits as well. So offensively, overall today, really solid performance. You have to love when this team goes up against a team like the Miami Marlins, and we're able to just go up there and have a lot of success and potentially get some players back on track. Or if you date back to the Pirate series as well, and especially with a player like an Andy Pages, who is starting to have a little bit of success, but once that Pirate series went off, he was just able to go off. These are the opportunities that come up occasionally, not always, but occasionally in your schedule that can help your teams get back on track. Really good to see for them. Continues to remain a struggle for Michael Conforto. What I will continue to say with him for at least a little bit is continue to be somewhat patient with Michael Conforto. It is very noteworthy that, especially after the first 2 weeks of the season, really that since that series at Philadelphia, that series at Philadelphia onward, he has struggled pretty mightily. Michael Conforto has, and it is reflective on all of the numbers. You look at his numbers currently right now, only batting 156 with a 570 OPS. A lot of the slug, the 2 home runs, came from the very early part of the season. Hit into a couple of double plays today. It's been a real struggle for Michael Conforto, and they're going to continue to evaluate him as the season goes along. I don't think they're ready to give up on him completely. They have a $17 million investment into Michael Conforto to try to get him to the player that he was showcasing and what a lot of the underlying metrics showed in 2024. So with Michael Conforto, you have to continue to evaluate the process as it goes along. For him to be successful, he has to be an above league average bat. And the only thing that he's doing right now at a well above league average level, or at above league average level right now, is being able to draw walks. The quality of contact just isn't there for right now. So with the $17 million investment, they're going to be patient. They're likely going to give this another probably at least 2 months to see what happens. Now, that doesn't mean that his role is going to remain the same for 2 months. That just means they're going to see how things play out for quite a bit, just because that's taking them a little bit closer into the trade deadline season. I still have confidence that he has a track record of being able to figure things out, but it has been a struggle for him to this point. So we will continue to be patient to see what exactly happens with Michael Conforto as things go forward. That's really the update on where the offense is at right now. I currently, as things stand, do not really expect any sort of changes unless there is an injury for probably the next at least month or so. You might see a little bit more plate appearances from a player like a Kike Hernandez if he goes in and helps fill in for a player like a Michael Conforto if you want to give him a little bit less reps. But for the most part, I would probably expect the same 13 players to be out there. Just logistically wise, if you're thinking about the logistics of the current roster on the offense, you have 13 players on offense, 12 of which are signed to major league deals, which means the only way to get rid of them is to either trade them or designate them or release them, basically, designate them for assignment. The only player that can be optioned down is Andy Pages, who right now is currently on fire. And as we said quite a bit, especially towards the end of the offseason, if you option Andy Pages and he has 20 days down at the minor league level, loses his last option year, loses a lot of value. Right now, Andy Pages is showing that he has an insane amount of value, which you always look for those type of assets to be part of your club, to be part of your organization and team. And Andy Pages is proving himself to be incredibly valuable right now, so you don't really want to option him down. And I don't see them moving off of particular players at this point. And we'll get it. Let's dive into this a little bit right now, because I know there, and I'm sure we'll go through. I'll go through some of the comments after this section, and then we'll dive into the pitching and particularly what is the plan going forward with this long road trip. So when it comes to making a change to this roster, there's already complications just because of the way the Dodgers have constructed their roster, with the way that they have a lot of players signed to free agent deals. When you don't have a lot of guys that can be optioned up and down, really limits your ability to maneuver guys back and forth, up and down, throughout the roster, and provide opportunities for some of the younger guys to come up and play at the big league level. Part of the reason why a player like a Hunter Fiducia isn't getting a whole lot of opportunities just because there really isn't any spot for him to be able to take advantage of. So I want to do a little bit of an exercise, and this could be something that you guys disagree with or alter slightly, but I believe when you're calling up or thinking about calling up particular players, I believe there is really three main criteria that you have to look out for, and all of them have to be met. in order to call somebody up, assuming that there isn't some sort of injury. Injuries are obviously the things that can turn this around, which, by the way, sounds like Tommy Edman should be okay. He was not part of the game today. Twisted something, I believe, in his ankle. Don't quote me on that. Look at David Vassay for a lot of that information. He's much more connected to the team than I am. Sounds like he should be okay, so I'm not expecting any sort of injury to come up on the position set player-wise. But when it comes to calling up players, I think there's 3 different criteria that has to be met. The first of which is there has to be some sort of hole that you're going to help fill in. And this comes particularly when you're looking at the guys at the major league level. There has to be some sort of opening that opens up that you are willing to move off of a certain player. Now, in a lot of organizations, this comes through the form of optioning guys down to the minor league level. Or there's a lot of teams that have players that are on their roster that they could designate for assignment. Similarly, how the Dodgers use some of their pitchers, they feel like they can move off of them. With the Dodgers, they have to be in a position where they either are willing to option Andy Pages down because they think the certain player is better than Andy Pages and would feel the role better than Andy Pages would. Or, in a much more realistic sense at this point, they have to be willing to move off of certain players and move on for them forever. So there has to be some sort of player that you're willing to write off and never see them be part of the Dodgers, at least for the 2025 season. That criteria has to be met before calling a particular player up. So if you want to talk about a Miguel Rojas, who the past couple of days performed really well but struggled a little bit before that, they would have to be willing to move off of that player. Or Chris Taylor, they have to be willing to move off of him. Or as a lot of people want, either Max Muncy or Michael Conforto, they would have to be willing to move off of those players and release them before calling somebody up. So that is the first step. That has to be met. And for a lot of the players on the Dodgers, you can make an argument that that could be the case for some of them, but it's more difficult to be able to make that case for a lot of different players, especially with the investment that they've made in players. Step number 2 that has to be met is the player has to be really performing well and not have a whole lot of holes. Have the player be as ready as possible to be moved up to the big league level. So the players at AAA, they don't have to just be going out there and producing pretty solid. They have to be really well-rounded to the point where you feel really confident that they're going to be able to come up to the big leagues and have a lot of success. You're looking for the small things that other teams could take advantage of and poke holes into different players to see, hey, maybe they could take advantage of this one thing, especially if you have a player at the big league level who has the ability to fill in with those shoes and be able to perform really well. You're looking for those small things to see what exactly might they be struggling a little bit. And then the third case that has to be called up is you have to put the young players in a position to be able to succeed at the big league level and get some fairly regular reps if you are expecting them to be able to perform well at the big league level. It might be different if you're talking about a player like a Hunter Fiducia, and I don't mean to pick on Hunter Fiducia. I think he is incredibly solid and been really good at the minor league level and deserves an opportunity at the big league level. But in a situation for him, and especially for a player would be, especially with the Dodgers, a backup catcher, there might be a little bit more limited roles that he has. But for other players, for example, like an Alex Freeland or a Hae-Sung Kim, if you're wanting them to be called up and be put in a Chris Taylor or Miguel Rojas type of role, the question that you have to answer is are you putting these players in a position where they are best going to be able to succeed at the big league level? Or, for example, if you're playing a younger player, perhaps at a position that he really has never played a lot beforehand, Are you putting those players in a position where they're best going to be able to succeed and give some sort of sustained run for them? Being in the best position to be able to succeed requires some sustained run, requires some comfortability at whatever position that they are going to be at, as well as providing them with players that are going to help mentor them along the way. That's been one of the most positive things about Andy Pages is he's been mentored by Teoscar Hernandez, which has proved so incredibly well for him. So when it comes to an Alex Freeland, when it comes to a Ha-Seong Kim, when it comes to a Dalton Rushing, the question that you have to ask first, is there a big league player that they can immediately replace that the Dodgers would feel 100% confident? I apologize for that. Wi-Fi just turned off for whatever reason. Just a second. So we'll go ahead. I believe we are back. Please let me know if we are back live here. Would be happy to be able to talk a little bit about this a little bit more. Let me recap with younger players section really quick, just in case I get interrupted with this. First, you have to be willing to say, hey, I'm ready to move off of a particular player at the big league level. If you want to call up Alex Freeland, Ha-Seong Kim, Dalton Rushing. 2, you would have to say this player is completely ready to be called up. You look at all of the numbers, you see what he's able to do at the big league level and determine, yes, he's completely ready to be called up and I'm ready to continue to give him that. I've seen enough at the big league level. And then 3, you have to be willing to give some sort of investment to allow these players to be able to succeed at the big league level and provide them with some consistency and some support to be able to help invest with them. Why do I mention a lot of this stuff? It's because there's a lot of calls to potentially designate for assignment a Miguel Rojas or a Michael Conforto or Max Muncy or a lot of these different players and call up a player like an Alex Freeland or call up a Ha-Seong Kim. Ha-Seong Kim, by the way, had a home run earlier today, his 5th home run in Oklahoma City, completely different than the type of player that necessarily expected when he came over. When you're looking at these players, you have to look deep into their numbers and find a role that you think is going to help make those players as good of big league players as they possibly can be. Otherwise, they could, in a Dodgers uniform, have a lot of struggles at the big league level. There could be a lot of frustration that grows because of that. They could potentially move on from those players, and perhaps they have success elsewhere. The Dodgers have drafted and have accumulated a lot of really solid position player prospects, some of which have had success or having success right now at the big league level. I think of Michael Busch having a really good season, Gavin Lux having a really good season, Zach McKinstry having a solid season, Johnny DeLuca before he was injured having a really solid season. One of the things that you have to be able to do if you want to see an Alex Freeland or a Dalton Rushing or or a Ha-Seong Kim have success at the big leagues for the Dodgers is put them in a situation where they have the chance to go out there and succeed. And that's what we'll wait and see for each one of these guys. With an Alex Freeland, this is something that I'll continue to take note of. And the biggest thing that is holding him back, because he's having a really solid start to the season, I still am concerned right now, and I think this is part of the reason, as well as them not meeting the first criteria, wanting to move off of any of the guys at the big league roster. But I think the biggest thing that they're going to be looking at with Alex Freeland is the swing and miss stuff. And one of the ways that you can look at, the easy way that you can look into that, is with the strikeout percentage. Entering tonight's game was at 29% for Oklahoma City. If it's at 29%, in AAA, that's usually going to go up at the big league level. But the biggest thing, and this is something that you can see, really they only have stats public for AAA guys, but you can look at their fan graphs and go down a little bit right before their fielding stats to a lot of the in zone and out of zone contact percentage, the swinging strike percentage, all of that stuff. There is a little bit of struggle to start the season, more so than what he had last year with some of the swing and miss stuff for Alex Freeland. And I think that is something that they're going to continue to work on with him, because a lot of the approach, a lot of the batted balls incredibly solid for free. He is going to be a big league player. Defensively fits in really well at shortstop, and I think he's going to have a really long big league career. But sometimes you have to give time for these guys to be able to grow and develop at the big league level and work on these things so that he's not trying to figure out how to limit some of the swing and miss stuff at the major league level. Let him continue to grow at the minor league level to be able to get to a place where he's going to be really solid. For Ha-Seong Kim, there's a little bit more swing and miss than what we had expected to start this season. Let him be able to work those things out to get him to the place where he needs to be. With Dalton Rushing, figure out what you want to do for some type of role for him, whether that is, and it seems to be the plan that he's going to be and remain a catcher. Figure out what the game plan is going to be for Dalton Rushing. I would not anticipate him to be playing left field for the Dodgers relatively soon unless they start playing him a lot more in left field right now. As Casey had mentioned, he was actually on D-Mac's show the other day and talked about that a little bit. That I think you have to put these players in a position where they are best going to succeed. And sometimes patience is a very good thing. These guys are going to be big league players, and it is my prayer that they become those big league players and go out there and have a lot of success. Sometimes you have to be patient with this process, and I think having guys, especially guys who don't play hardly ever, like a Miguel Rojas or Chris Taylor, be on the bench, or an Austin Barnes who doesn't play necessarily a whole lot. Be there, be okay with not taking every single day reps, while allowing some of your younger guys that you need in order for the offense to be successful long term in the future, having those guys continue to grow and develop at the minor league level, I think is a really positive thing right now. So something to keep an eye out for. Also, another thing to keep an eye out for, today starting second baseman for the Oklahoma City Comets was Alex Freeland. There's a lot of talk, there's a lot of questions about what he's able to do defensively. Fits primarily as a shortstop. No, that's where he loved to play at the big league level. He's played quite a bit of third base to start the season, 9 games at third base. He only has 6 games, or technically 8 games at the minor league level since 2022 at the second base position. I got to see all 6 of his games in 2024 when he was with Noah Miller at shortstop. I don't really have any issue with him at second base. I think you could potentially fill in at second base, but it is something noteworthy that they're starting to give Alex Freeland some reps at second base. Perhaps something to keep in mind going forward, especially if they don't see a lot of production from a player like Michael Conforto. Perhaps you could move Tommy Edman to center, Andy Pages to left or right field, perhaps Pages to right, Teoscar to left. Probably the best defensive situation of that. And then perhaps an Alex Freeland at the second base position could be a potential opening, especially as they continue to work with Ha-Seong Kim part-time at the shortstop position as well. Having Alex Freeland play third, short, and second, all very good things with what he's able to do. It's just one aspect that you want to see him continue to work at, continue to grind at, and that's, I know that he's going to work incredibly hard, and he showcased himself in past of being a player that can limit his strikeouts. So continue to be patient with these younger guys. Allow the process to be able to go through and be able to put each player in a place where they can succeed really well. So that's what I have to say on that. I'm going to continue to hold both on over panicking for some of the guys that are struggling, over rejoicing with a lot of the players that are succeeding really well, although I will celebrate when players are doing well at the big league level, and then be able to try to make rational, smart decisions and have players check off all the check marks before they're called up, because I don't want these players just to be big league players. I want them to be big league players for a long time, and hopefully we can have some of these guys be put in a situation where there can be a Los Angeles Dodger for the long term. So be patient with a lot of these younger guys. They're incredibly talented, and they are coming pretty soon. Want to get into a couple of comments, then we'll talk about the pitching staff, particularly what the game plan could be going forward as the Dodgers have the day off tomorrow, but then enter a 10-game road trip where they have 10 games in a row. gets a little bit tricky, especially with the injuries to the pitchers. So what exactly do we do from there? We'll get into the comments section first before that. Craig Osberg, thank you very much for joining us. Muncie Homer, a confidence booster. Absolutely it was. It was great to see that for them. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Thank you very much for joining us today. Talking a little bit about the Mets and the Yankees being a real series. Marlins and Pirates, not necessarily the greatest. Pirates put up a little bit of a fight. Marlins put up a fight in the first game, but the Dodgers, for the most part, were able to take care of business, taking 5 out of 6. That is what you expect from the Dodgers entering these series. Muncie finally, and runs offense. Go Dodgers, back to you as well. Craig Osberg, Conforto, I don't see adjustments in his game. He's got a lot of work to do at this point to be able to make those adjustments, because it's not just one of those things where he's not putting up hits. There's a lot of times where a lot of players don't put up hits, but it is the at-bats and especially the quality of contact that just doesn't seem to be there. He's rolling over way too many ground balls at this point, as the double plays have indicated. He's very much, I think, in his head right now. And perhaps it's going to take one of those, he just needs to hit one extra base hit or one home run, because I think it's been a long time. There might be one extra base hit, if I don't recall, but it's been a long time since he's had a lot of extra base hits. Michael Conforto has. So maybe just getting a double or getting a home run could really help spark some of his confidence, because you've seen what confidence did to a player like Andy Pages once he got it. Perhaps that could be something that could help Michael Conforto, but the adjustments, the process just really isn't right there right now, and it needs to be there for a player that's not the greatest defender in left field, albeit he had a nice play early in the game today. Owl of Minerva, Hope DePaula rushing, future looks bright as far as the offense goes. Yeah, it's fun to watch. I've obviously had the chance to watch a lot of Josue DePaula, Zaire Hope, been to, I think, 7 Loons games in person so far this season. We'll get to go to a ton more coming up end of May, and especially through June and July. My schedule opens up, and the Loons schedule opens up to a place where I can go to a lot of these games. Hope and DePaula, there's a reason why both of those players are highlighted a ton. It is because they're incredibly talented, and they're going to put themselves in a position to go up and be part of the future of this club. Still a long ways out, and for a lot of people who want Zaire Hope to come up to the big leagues, he still is adjusting to a lot of stuff. There's been some swing and miss that's part of his game that he needs to adjust to. The exit velos are insane with him. Josue DePaula, again, there's certain elements to his game that he's still adjusting to, working on. Both of those guys are incredibly young, though. They're 19, 20 years old at the high A level, which is incredibly young for that particular level, going out there and really succeeding this far in the season. And then the only thing that's holding Dalton Rushing back is the position of where the Dodgers and his particular role with the Los Angeles Dodgers. But he's, and I've repeated this quite a bit, of the younger players, the prospects that are within the Dodger system, he's the guy that I have right now the most confidence in to be an offensive skill set, have the best offensive skill set at the major league level. That's the player that I look at, is Dalton Rushing, with how good he is. So I'm excited to see how he's able to go out there and how the Dodgers are going to be able to implement him as part of this roster. Very important for them to try to figure that out and figure out a way to make sure that Will Smith still gets some time at the catching position, but also you can incorporate Dalton Rushing when they deem him ready. I think one of the most interesting things and most complicated factors that they're going to have to take into consideration is, what exactly do they do with Austin Barnes? Because we've talked a lot about Chris Taylor, him reaching 10 years. Austin Barnes is about 8.5 years, which means if they get him through the whole full season, He only have half a year left before he reaches that 10-year service time. He probably could get that with another team, so that could be a really good argument to say, yeah, he's going to go out and get 10 years with another team. I don't really have a concern with that. But that seems to be kind of the direction that they're going with a player like a Chris Taylor at this point. So with a player like Austin Barnes, who has meant a lot to this organization, do they look to do that as well? And if they do, that really limits what they're able to do with Dalton Rushing. And then even if Dalton Rushing does get called back, he can't be in the Austin Barnes position where he's only getting 200 plate appearances a year. He has to be getting a minimum of 350, 400 plate appearances a year, which becomes incredibly difficult if you don't have a DH or first base position open. So how will they maneuver that? Where they provide positional flexibility between him and Will Smith is a storyline to watch going forward if you're the Dodgers. But continue to go out there, be productive offensively. I know he had at least one hit today. Dalton Rushing did. So I'm excited to see what he's able to do with the offense. Craig Osterberg, Kike had a good day offensively and defensively. Had a really good play. When pitching got a little bit shaky at the end, which I've seen a little bit of that with Great Lakes this season on road getaway games. Not great to see bullpens start to get quite shaky like that, but Kike Hernandez was able to go out there and put a stab at it and finish off the game. Mr. Classic, thank you very much for joining us. What's up? Looks like you're on vacation. Yeah, so this actually, there's a reason why I'm wearing this. So this is actually the Great Lakes Loons Margaritaville jersey, which they released this. I think they released this a couple of years ago, and they had, I believe, a jersey auction, which they do quite a bit for a lot of their specialty jerseys, in which a bunch of fans bought this jersey. And last year they released these jerseys on sale in their shop, so then you can go ahead and buy the Great Lakes Loons Margaritaville jersey, and they sold like that. They just re-released them on sale. And so if you want a Great Lakes Loons Margaritaville jersey, this is a beautiful jersey. I would very highly encourage you to get it as soon as possible before these things sell out, because if history is any indication, these are going to sell out real quick. They have Margaritaville night at the end of May, so really solid. Really solid jersey, and basically like I'm on vacation. As Christopher Navarro, CNAV says, aloha back to you. CNAV also says, Austin loved the movie posters on the wall. Yeah, actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because if you look behind me with a lot of the posters that I have, and this is something that you can send me a message about if you want a little bit more details on a lot of these. These aren't your typical movie posters. These are actually posters that or there's one that the Loons made, but these are actually Loons-related posters that are up on the screen. So there's one that you can't really see because it's in the corner over there. First one is poster based off the movie Here Comes the Boom. It is Here Comes the Loons. It's the first poster that we ever made. My cousin and I worked on it. It was during 2020. We were bored. There was no Loons baseball. And so we decided to make our own movie poster and put the Loons mascots on there. So there's Louie Loon. Here comes the Loons. The second year, which we actually brought into the stadium, is the Karate Loon. So you can look. There's Louie Loon and Rally Camel in the background. Third one, Gremloons, which Gremloons. The fourth one, which is blocked off most of the time on the screen, is a missing Rally Camel poster that the Loons made for their True Crimes Night, their award-winning True Crimes Night. And then the last one, which is over there, is actually the poster that we take into Dow Diamond this year, which is Edward Loon Hands. So we are a little bit of strange creatures out here in Great Lakes, or at least us. As far as me and my cousin and Damino and the people that we go with, a little bit strange in there. So I throw those into the background. You can't really see them unless you zoom into the cameras. But yeah, just let me know. Send me a message on Twitter or something if you're like, hey, I'm really kind of curious what those look like a little bit up close and personal. They are pretty sweet, but they are in the background of the shots that we have right here. CNAV Sauer pitched great yesterday. I'd like to see him get another look on the bump. Yeah, Matt Sauer went into the game yesterday, pitched 5 innings, which was incredible. That's exactly what the Dodgers needed since their bullpen has been taxed as much as they have been. They've been under a lot of stress, and they have been put under a lot of innings, which is not ideal, particularly because this is a bullpen that went throughout the entire October. They pitched an extra month than most other teams did, or at least a couple of extra weeks more than most other teams did. And the last thing that you want to do is put added and additional stress on those arms and have them not be ready to go in October. So it was great to see a player, and much needed from a player like a Matt Sauer, to come in and provide them with the 5 innings against a team like the Miami Marlins, and go out there and provide some rest to the bullpen, especially when Tyler Glasnow was only able to pitch 1 inning. The game plan for the pitching staff yesterday went about as good as it possibly could. Today was really solid for the pitching staff as well. You did not have to use your high leverage arms, albeit Tanner Scott had to warm up at the end of the game because things started to get a little bit scary, or slightly scary at some point. They got some effective innings out of some guys that aren't the high leverage arms, which could be something that they look to do a little bit more of going forward, just to relieve some of the stress of some of the veteran type guys that you want to rely upon in the postseason. You can't go out there and put all of the stress on Alex Vesia, on Tanner Scott, on Kirby Yates, on Evan Phillips, on all of these guys that you want to rely upon in October. You can't use them each and every single day. You have to be able to provide some breaks. So anytime you're able to get some success from players like a Matt Sauer, or Luis Garcia is able to go out there and pitch some solid innings, or even a player like a Jack Dreyer is able to get you 2 scoreless innings. Those players that you would not necessarily expect, although Jack Dreyer's in a little bit of a different category because you know that he'll be on the team long-term for the Dodgers. You wouldn't necessarily expect a lot of those players to be key contributors in October, but the more innings that they can provide in the regular season, the less stress that there is going to be on the relief arms that you actually need to rely upon in October. So you have to celebrate those successes when you have a player like that. He got optioned down today to make room for Tony Gonsolin, which means he will not be eligible to return to the big league roster for, I believe, 15 days. And I believe he's been optioned down maybe 2 times already. So this is something important to keep in mind when and we'll talk through this in a little bit. There is, I believe, 5 different times that you can option a player down to the minor leagues throughout the season, which is one of the reasons why they aren't calling up a Landon Knack, Justin Robleski, Bobby Miller, or Nick Frasso, these guys that are healthy and throwing right now, and calling them up from one game and then immediately optioning them back down. Because you can only do that a very limited amount of times with the new rules that Major League Baseball has set. And so you have to be incredibly careful, and you have to be opportunistic on how you do that to make sure that you are saving some of those options throughout the entire season for when you might need it a little bit down the road. So how you use those options is important. They did option Matt Sauer down because I think he's one of those guys who does have minor league options, who they feel more comfortable doing that earlier in the season because he might not necessarily be a guy that they have long-term plans, at least initially, for. But if he continues to pitch like this, perhaps he pitches his way into a situation where they have more long-term plans for him, like Anthony Banda turned from a player that they probably were only going to keep for a short amount of time, now is part of the team long-term. Great to see the outing for Matt Sauer that he had yesterday. Johnny Owen, thank you very much for joining us. Michael Conforto right now hasn't been performing too terribly well, so we'll see what he's able to do going forward. Al Minerva sometimes moving on from a bad investment is the best move. Yes, but you have to make sure that that is a bad investment. And is it something where it is so limiting to the team and you have somebody that can go up and easily replace them immediately? Could make an argument that right now James Outman could make a better player at the big league level than a Michael Conforto, based on the way that Michael Conforto is struggling both offensively and defensively. James Outman will at least provide really solid defense and perhaps make your outfield defense incredibly better going forward. But you have to be sure that that is a bad investment, and that you're not cutting it off right before he starts to go off. Especially when it's a $17 million investment, they're going to give it a lot of time to be able to make sure that there's nothing left that they can do at this point before moving on. And let's remember, it's April 30th at this point. I think they give him at least another month and a half or so, probably close to 2 months. I've already stated, not necessarily with the exact same playing time, but with a continued run of fairly solid at-bats, plate appearances, before they make an official determination before the trade deadline, if they really need to go out there and perhaps get a lefty outfielder. That could be something that they look for. Craig Osterberg, Dodgers won't DFA Conforto. He will be part of a trade since he makes $17 million. Very well could be. And if that is the case, you would have to look to see what exactly you could trade him for, because, again, when you're talking about trades, it's not just who do I want and I don't have a player that I don't want. We'll trade the player I don't want for somebody I do want. That doesn't usually work out for these trades. You have to think about the other team's perspective and why another team would want a player that is struggling pretty mightily for $17 million for 1 year in a player like a Michael Conforto in order for that trade to go down. We'll see what happens for it. Philip Gomez, trade for a young shortstop stud. Could be something that they look for, although I think they would probably give that more to an Alex Freeland to see if he has the ability to be able to be that. What could be interesting, and perhaps this is something that, depending on what they see going forward in the future, and depending on what they do with Will Smith and with an Austin Barnes, the last thing that you want to do is wait way too long for like a player like a Dalton Rushing before calling him up or getting him to be ready. Kind of similar to what happened in the Michael Busch situation. We are not at that point right now. When Michael Busch was traded, he had spent, I believe, a year and a half of being incredibly successful at the AAA level and was looking at a third year at the AAA level before being traded. That could be something where we could look at next offseason as something for a Dalton Rushing where he could be in a very similar Michael Busch-esque position, in which case you might potentially look for some type of stud shortstop prospect, perhaps a prospect for prospects trade similar to Michael Busch for Zaire Hope and Jackson Ferris. You could see them be creative on that if they don't see a realistic role for Dalton Rushing going forward. But for the most part, I think they're going to give Alex Freeland the primary shot, even if it's not first at shortstop. They know he has the ability to play shortstop, and if he can be solid, then they will go ahead and call him up and see what he's able to do. Philip Gomez, we have so many guys in the minors ready for the MLB, just sitting there. Trade them and get a young shortstop. There's part of it that I agree with that, and that is the young players that are just stuck at the minor league level that I hope get an opportunity to play at the big league level. I'm thinking of guys like a Hunter Fiducia, like a Ryan Ward, deserve to get big league opportunities by the way that they played. Dalton Rushing deserves at some point. Alex Freeland and Hason Kim are really close to being able to get that opportunity. We'll have to wait to see what they want to do, and particularly what position that they want to target as well. Al Minerva, that could work. I'd throw in Conforto and move Teo to left. Betts to right field. Maybe the Jays will pull a trigger as far as a shortstop. Perhaps that's talking a little bit more Bo Bichette. We'll see if that's the case. Right now, actually, Mookie Betts has been playing really solid defensively at the shortstop position. However much stake you want to buy into the defensive metrics, outs above average, defensive run saves, all of those different metrics. Mookie Betts, at least with outs above average, relatively solid with what he's able to do. It's the question of, is his offense completely there? Which, with Mookie Betts, I have zero concerns about that. Philip Gomez or Al Minerva, I knew we should have traded for Arenado. Bet for Anzalita, didn't like that idea. I wasn't for the Arenado thing entering the season, particularly with his contract length and with some of the decline with his offensive numbers. I would just say wait to see what happens the rest of the season and see what happens. There's a little bit of concerning things with some of the underlying metrics with Arenado. Off to a really solid start, and defensively, he's really solid. We'll wait to see what happens. And you have to remember that you can't have a $30 million investment into every single player on the roster. You have to have certain guys, and you have to hit on those big investments. And then you have to have guys that are mid-tier and lower-tier investments. And Max Muncy is a mid-tier investment, making only $13 million or so. Actually, at a really good deal based on of his production level that he has put up. And he's put up numbers that are, or at least over the past 2 seasons, have been really similar to Nolan Arenado's numbers. And Nolan Arenado's at a high-tier contract. So we'll wait to see what happens with Max Muncy. Right now I'm comfortable with the mid-tier level that they are paying for him, and I believe Max Muncy has enough of a track record to be able to turn things around and be able to be successful going forward. But it is not a guarantee, and it is a painful reminder in the game of baseball that success is rare, it is never guaranteed, and players can drop off pretty dramatically. So we'll see what happens through the course of the season. Obviously, you can look back and say which decision is the best. Entering the season, I was not for that. We'll see what happens, and we'll see if you guys are right, Philip Gomez, Al Minerva, about Nolan Arenado versus Max Muncy. We'll see if Max Muncy uses this home run to be able to propel himself offensively going forward. All right, to conclude the show today, which I believe I got caught up with all of the different comments. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and being part of this. I want to talk a little bit about what the schedule is going to be pitching-wise, because I think there's going to be some moving pieces that are a part of this pitching staff, because now you get into a stretch where you don't have an off day every single day of the week. You have some days in which you have to be able to figure out what exactly you want to do, and the Dodgers are going to have to make a decision as far as what they are going to do for their pitching staff and how they want to construct it going forward. So let's talk about what's coming up for the Dodgers. Tomorrow, they have an off day. Great for the bullpen, and especially with the past 2 days, not having to use most of your high leverage arms, giving them additional rest, really good for them to have that. Friday through Sunday, you have a series in Atlanta. You have Yoshi, Roki, and Dustin May taking those games, at least projected by Fangraphs. I believe that is the expectation. Yoshi Yamamoto has been pitching basically every Friday. Roki Sasaki has been pitching basically every single Saturday. And then Sunday will be Dustin May's turn for the rest of the rotation. Where it's going to be complicated is, what do you do for the Marlins series? So you go Friday through Sunday in Atlanta. That is the 2nd through the 4th. Then the 5th through the 7th, you travel to Miami and you play a 3-game series against the Marlins team that you just saw. Just got to see the Marlins, get to see them again. Pretty good time to play the Marlins based on the way the Dodgers played against the Marlins. Good stretch. And actually, that lines up perfectly with particular plans that they could have with the rotation. We'll see what they're able to do. And then you have a 4-game series, the 8th through the 11th, against the Arizona Diamondbacks in Arizona before you have an off day on Monday. So, they have the Braves series figured out with their rotation. how you get to the next start with Yoshi Yamamoto and Roki Sasaki remains a question mark. And what also remains a question mark is what exactly do they do with Yoshi Yamamoto and Roki Sasaki the rest of the season? To this point of the season, they have had the luxury of being able to pitch Yoshi and Roki every single Friday and Saturday for the most part. Been set days, been a schedule that has been very similar to the to their Japan schedule that they are a little bit more accustomed to, and also puts them in a situation where they can best be healthy. What the Dodgers are going to have to figure out is it a priority to keep them on that schedule, to do whatever you possibly can to make sure that Yoshi and Roki pitch Friday and Saturday? Or is it going to be something where you have to, just because of the way the roster is constructed and the way that you're able to move things out, have to move that up a little bit and still have a 6-man rotation, but instead of pitching Friday and Saturday, Yoshi and Roki would pitch Thursday and Friday against Arizona. That is important because you have Tony Gonsolin as part of the starting pitching staff. If they move to Thursday and Friday against the Arizona Diamondbacks, Yoshi and Roki that is, then you have 2 games against the Marlins in which you have to figure out what you're going to do with the rotation. Who's going to start those games? If you keep it to Friday and Saturday, then you have to figure out what you're going to do with 3 different games. And that gets a lot more complicated to be able to figure out. I say 3 more games because then you would have to figure out Monday through Wednesday against the Marlins and then Thursday against the Diamondbacks. I would assume that Thursday or Wednesday would be Tony Gonsolin's day to be able to start. My expectation, my best guess, just because I don't think it is sustainable throughout the entire season as much as they probably want to, and perhaps it probably would be in the best interest for the Dodgers long term to keep a set schedule for Yoshi and Roki to try to keep them healthy. Logistically, especially without Shohei Ohtani being the bonus pitcher on the staff, and without a lot of long relief options out of the bullpen. Most of the guys in the bullpen are short inning spurt guys, which is a little bit of an issue if you're trying to run a 6-man rotation and you don't want to wear out a lot of these arms. I think it's probably inevitable that they will probably have to pitch a Thursday and Friday. So then you have to question, okay, what exactly do you do Monday through Wednesday against the Marlins? My best guess would be Tony Gonsolin pitching Wednesday against the Marlins in Miami. So then you would have to figure out Monday and Tuesday. So there's a couple of different options and avenues that the Dodgers could go down. They could go ahead and look to turn a Ben Kasparius into and stretch him out a little bit more, just because that is something that he's done throughout his entire minor league career. He's been a starting pitcher. So they could stretch him out a little bit more. It has to be more progressive. It's not an immediate going from 2-inning type of pitcher to a 7-inning pitcher. But they could stretch him out, do a mostly bullpen type game, but have him go out there, try to pitch 3 to 4 innings out of the bullpen. That probably is going to be one of the games that they go ahead, or that's probably going to be one of the games. And then you have the option of trying to call up somebody from the minor league level who can just be up there, pitch some innings, and then be designated for assignment, especially with the Marlins series. I think the Marlins series is a series where you could potentially call up a Landon Knack, who I do believe pitched a couple of days ago, so I don't know when he's scheduled to start. That could be a complicated factor. Or Justin Robleski or Bobby Miller. But what you don't want to do is call them up and then immediately send those guys down when you're wasting some of the options that you could potentially need going forward. I think that the Marlins series presents a unique opportunity to potentially call somebody up who you might feel comfortable designating for assignment basically right after their appearance. So my expectation my best guess of what they could potentially do, which this is entirely dependent on what happens during the Brave series, and you hope that you're able to get some length out of the guys in the rotation, is for the Marlins series, they have one start from Tony Gonsolin. They have a bullpen-ish type game from Ben Kasparius. Then you throw somebody else out there and hope that your offense is able to have a lot of success because it's the Marlins. You don't end up necessarily using yet a Landon Knack, Justin Wrobleski, or Bobby Miller. Although, if it works out with the schedule, perhaps that is the best plan going forward, especially if you need somebody to just go out there and provide some innings for the bullpen. It's going to be a little bit of a question mark how they handle the pitching staff over this 10-game stretch, and players like a Luis Garcia or a Uendries, I forgot what his last name, Gomez, that's what his name is, who just came in during the later part of the game. Those are two players that potentially could be designated for assignment over the stretch just because they don't have any options, and with a lot of the other players that are in the bullpen, they can't or won't send guys down. Perhaps they could send down a Jack Dreyer if that is the case going forward. But something to keep in mind going forward with the Dodgers pitching staff, it's going to be very much dependent on what happens during this week or this upcoming series against the Atlanta Braves. But during that Marlins series, which if you're going to have any series where there's question marks pitching-wise, probably not the worst series to have that happen against the Marlins series, where you might be able to get away throwing out some guys that you might be comfortable moving off from after the game is over. That is coming up for the Dodgers. They have a 10-game road trip coming up before they return home on May 13th against the Athletics. Not the Oakland Athletics, just the Athletics, and they have a long home stretch from there. So it'll be a little bit before the Dodgers return home, but I know you guys are excited to go back to Dodger Stadium and celebrate the Dodgers. But until then, be able to see them on the road and watch some more Dodgers baseball. One last comment, Philip Gomez, who do you see as a sleeper prospect? We'll actually turn this into sleeper prospects because I tweeted this out a couple days ago. I have not updated it since then, but entering this week, I believe it was the 7th most strikeouts for a team in minor league baseball belonged to the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes. And what's important about that is we are very early into the season, and AAA baseball has played 5 to 6 games more than Rancho Cucamonga has, and yet they have more strikeouts than majority, at least at the point when I had tweeted this out, than majority of the teams that are at the upper levels of the minor leagues. Their pitching staff, and that's not from the hitting perspective, that's from the pitching perspective. The pitchers for Rancho Cucamonga, some of the pitchers are getting an insane swing and miss stuff. We'll talk a little bit about some of the swing and miss stuff with some of the guys at the level right now. This is entering the game today. They have 5 different guys with strikeout percentages above 38%, most of them above 40%. The highlight of this, and this is perhaps the breakout guy across minor league baseball, depending on where things go going forward this season, is a guy that Casey's been talking about quite a bit, Jean-Paul Lignan. Pitcher for Rancho Cucamonga. If you have not had a chance to see him in person, you need to go immediately to go watch this guy pitch. His mix is insane. He's a starting pitcher, 20 2/3 innings, a 54% strikeout percentage, which is unheard of even for a relief pitcher, but especially from a starting pitcher. Walk percentage just at above 5.5, just at around 5.5%. 0.87 ERA in 20 2/3 innings pitch. Just ridiculous stuff. His swing and strike percentage is 24%, which means 24% of the pitches he throws end up in a swing and miss. Just ridiculous. And he's not the only guy that's striking guys out at the minor league level. Ryan Brown, with 9 2/3 innings, relief pitcher, has a 50% strikeout percentage. Logan Tabeling, I don't know if I'm saying these names right, has a 48% strikeout percentage with a 3.7 walk percentage in his 7 1/3 innings to start the season. Alex Makarowicz, who was able to be on Dodgers Daily during the offseason, had his 47% strikeout percentage, hasn't given up an earned run. Michael Vilcek, don't know if I'm saying that correctly, 42% strikeout percentage in his 6 innings. Aiden Fuller, who's a starting pitcher, 21 in the 3rd innings, 38% strikeout percentage. There is a lot of guys that are down in Rancho that are striking an insane amount of hitters out. It is unbelievable. Another relief pitcher to keep in mind, this is at the Great Lakes level, one of the guys that is having some success that I've talked about for quite a bit, and you can see what has happened to him since he's gained confidence. It's a player by the name of Carson Hobbs. Actually, while we were live, I was watching the Loons game a little bit, and he was able to close out the Loons game today for Great Lakes and was able to get more swing and miss stuff. Carson Hobbs is having an incredible start in his limited action to this point of the season, 5 or 6 innings, and every single one has been dominant to this point of the season. So those are some names to keep an eye out for. Sleeper prospects. It's sleeper prospect. I know it. Sleeper prospect. It's prospects because there are some guys, especially down in Rancho, that, oh my goodness, they're swing and miss stuff. Which, to be fair, it is at the single A level. But usually that type of stuff translates at least a little bit to the upper levels. We've seen that for a pitcher like a Sarin Lau, who had insane swing and miss stuff with Rancho back in 2023. I think it was 2023 when he transferred from a position player to a pitcher. Made his major league debut with the Seattle Mariners. We've seen that, and we continue to see really good swing and miss stuff, even if the results on the ERA side aren't great to start the season. Really, that's mostly from the first start for a player like a Jose Rodriguez. Insane swing and miss stuff that's leading to continued success. For a Kyle Hurt, insane swing and miss stuff led to a lot of success. And you're seeing that from a lot of players down in Rancho right now, which is so incredibly encouraging to see a next wave of potential pitchers prop up. Odds will say not each one of these guys is going to be at the big league level, but this is noteworthy to have all these pitchers and to see how many strikeouts Rancho is piling up. So highly encourage you guys, if you're in California area, don't just go watch the Dodgers, which go watch the Dodgers as much as you can, but if you have time, go check out the Quakes while they are affiliate of the Los Angeles Dodgers and watch these guys in action because these guys can move up pretty quickly. Last year, Edgardo Henriquez at this time last year was pitching for the Quakes and pitched in the postseason for the Dodgers. Not saying that's going to happen for any of these guys, but what that is to say is these guys can move up fairly quickly, and they've got a lot of talent down there. That's going to do it for the show here today. Been an absolute privilege to be able to dive into the game today, the state of where the roster is at, how we are able to incorporate particularly young position player prospects. That section when I'm talking about incorporating young players, it's a little bit different story when it comes to the pitching side because there is much more of a need for pitchers to call up, for them to be called up to the big league level, so they get more opportunities than the position players, even though it is much more volatile for the pitchers to come up than it is for the position player side. But I think that section is actually incredibly important when you're talking about guys that you want to see call up because you have to meet and think about those criteria, and that's exactly the criteria or some of the criteria that an organization looks at to try to be able to meet if they're going to make especially some drastic move when it comes to a lot of players on this roster that they've either invested a lot of money in, a lot of time in, or have just meant a lot to the organization. So important to keep those things in mind. That's going to do it for the show today. Casey will continue to provide coverage. He was at today's game covering Clayton Kershaw with his rehab start. He is eligible to return May 17th, I believe is what it is, from the 60-day injured list. If he remains healthy, I think it is everybody's expectation that he's going to return to the rotation immediately. So there's only a limited time that you have to really try to figure out exactly what to do with the pitching staff before you get a little bit of extra reinforcements to the pitching staff to be able to help the Dodgers with their pitching staff. Still is going to be tricky on how to figure this thing out, and you hope that there's not any more injuries that happen to pitchers. Dodgers have a lot of talent, and they're in first place, and they have a great record, and they are a phenomenal baseball team, and they have showcased the ability to figure these things out. They have too much talent not to be able to figure things out, even when things go awry. And I hope that Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, able to come back healthy. But until then, the Dodgers are going to figure things out, and they'll be just fine. Casey will be back covering the Clayton Kershaw outing. I don't know if he'll do a show. He might do a show, post it tomorrow morning. If not, there'll be a show that comes up pretty soon. Friday night, I'll have to check with Casey to see if we're going to be able to do a Friday night live show, or if you'll be at Oklahoma City or Tulsa or somebody or somewhere. Please let us know if you want to see a live show with both of us. We'd love to be able to get back and be together again on a live show. Those are always the most fun, when Casey and I, or Casey and Coach Barakoff, or Coach Holt, or Mark, who's a new part of the show. I haven't had the chance to be able to interact with him yet. Get to be able to do a show, and hopefully we'll all be able to do a live show pretty soon. Thank you for joining us here tonight. We will be back pretty soon here, Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. But until then, thank you very much for joining, and go Dodgers.